Yeah,
What's
sure,
going on
why
in the
not?
world of sports ball, friend?
Well, nothing much. Although, except apparently it looks like there's about to be a revolution about to happen through football in Australia.
Sports ball revolution?
Sports ball revolution.
Would you like to give us... I know some of the details because I have my good Wanderers following friend here, and my girlfriend also is a huge fan of the Wanderers.
Yeah, so you're pretty much in a situation where you can't really avoid this news, no matter how much you try with your anti-sports tirades.
Yeah, I'm not really anti-sport. It's more just, it's more apathy.
Okay.
Really, sport has never really been my thing. Hockey being the exception. Though I am getting into the sports ball, I must say.
Yeah. I understand that you went to a match for the first time.
I did go to a Wanderers game, yes.
And what were your impressions?
You know what? I can see what the appeal is, and like live events like that are always, they always get me right here, no matter what it is, except maybe a Justin Bieber concert or something, or Jonestown. No, it was good. It was good, and they won, which is fantastic.
But the other leading question, well, it's probably going to ruin where I'm going with this, but
yes,
I guess my other leading question is: when you were watching that match, did you feel like you needed to protect yourself in some way? Did you feel like you needed to smuggle in some kind of shank or?
I did smuggle in many shanks or a piece. With all that gun control, I don't think that'll be possible, especially for me, the least law-savvy person on the planet. So, no, I think, like, I was only in, like, the general stores. I wasn't in the active bays or anything like that, but generally everyone was, fine. I didn't know.
Very friendly atmosphere, you would say?
Yes.
Okay.
Would you like to get to where you were going?
Yeah, okay, well...
I was there with a family, so... Yeah.
Alright, well, if a lot of the news articles over the past couple of weeks have been anything to go by, you would consider the soccer in Australia, or the football in Australia, to be very much the war zone. So, I mean, I guess where this all started, this craziness started, was an article by a certain News Corp journalist, who always have the most non-partisan news coverage, I find.
Are we naming names? Shall we name names? Are we stooping that low? I
don't know.
I reckon she put herself out there.
That shall who not be named. Psych, Rebecca Wilson. Wrote this article where she disclosed, I think, 120 something people on the banned list.
Mm-hmm.
So as a fan, and I'm hoping as a passive onlooker, and even an apathetic onlooker such as yourself, it raises a couple of concerns. In that,
I was under the impression, this is what Mel, my girlfriend, was telling me, that their privacy was meant to be upheld.
Correct. So that information was confidential, and then here it is. Their likeness is being put in the front page of the Sunday Telegraph.
Yeah, that's we had a big thing about the data retention thing, and you know how old and cranky I got about that.
Yeah.
So that falls into the same thing. I think, I think it's dogged. I think it's just a gross mishandling of information that should have been kept between those who were banned and the FFA.
Yeah. Well, there's still a lot of...
I know some terms. I know FFA.
What does FFA stand for, Luke?
Football Association.
At least you're trying to fit in.
Yeah.
So anyway, like with the banned list,
Save me here. What does FFA stand for?
Football Federation of Australia.
There we go.
Although with so many F's in there, you'd think there'd be at least one swear word tucked in there, but no, that's what it is. But anyway, with this ban list, there's still a lot of conjecture over where and how those names got revealed.
Mm-hmm.
FFA said no, but there could be other ways that could have been revealed. I mean, these lists come from different ways.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, that's one issue. I suppose where things have really escalated is the stance that the FFA have taken on this, because when you release a ban list, then or you've also got to talk about how people came about to be banned. And there's differing stories. Like, people are saying that people have gotten banned for something as lame, in my opinion, as yelling very loudly in a very contrary manner. There's even some instances where people have even been confused with other people, so they've been kicked out of the stadium when it was another person that actually caused the behaviour that was out of that wasn't the way to be, the way to behave.
From what I understand, there's no real appeals process.
Well, that's what I'm getting to. So, mistakes will be made, of course, but yeah, the way that it currently stands is when you're banned, you're banned. You haven't got a right to appeal. Not really any way to review it. Although the FFA in the past week have said, "Oh, we'll give it a go." Basically, where I think that came through a bit of pressure, where they said, "Oh, well, if you have a look at this, these couple of paragraphs we have in this policy statement, this couple of lines of this policy statement,
policy statement that we very quickly added to about 5 seconds ago. Yeah, if you don't mind reading that."
Yeah, it was a bit like that. But then the argument is, well, like if there is going to be an appeal, shouldn't the burden of proof be on the FFA rather than the person to come up with the evidence, or the banned person to come up with the evidence? So the FFA haven't really been forthcoming with meeting that request. So hence the next step has been to potentially boycott matches in the unforeseeable future.
I was watching I think Melbourne Victory were playing. See, I know team names.
Okay.
2 Wanderers and Melbourne Victory, but that's about it.
There we go.
I know 2, and Sydney FC, but we don't talk about that. Apparently.
What does the FC stand for, Luke?
Football club.
There we go.
I hope.
There we go. It's learning.
Just going off Manchester FC here, which, I'm slowly learning.
There we go. Attaboy.
I was watching a game with Mel. There we go. They'll find a little lead in there. I could have kept that. And there was this was on the TV, and there was just this massive walkout, and so that had. I'm assuming that had something to do with the rather dodgy appeals process.
Yes.
And apparently more have happened since. I think you posted a quick snapshot on Facebook with someone holding up some banners, a couple of people holding up banners and stuff, which...
Yeah, so the time that we're podcasting, the last round of matches, there was a commitment by all the active support people to do a walkout sometime during the match. So I went to watch the Wanderers play against Central Coast Mariners, and I think somewhere in... it was at least 40 minutes into the game. I can't remember whether it was like the beginning of the second half or not.
Yep.
The RBB, who was just sitting underneath, made a very controlled and orderly walkout of the game. And everyone gave him a standing ovation. There was no issues. There was no consternation with the cops. It was just a controlled and orderly walkout. It was done in a number of ways, whether it be a walkout or putting up a banner, making a big statement as to what they think of the situation, or both. But yeah, that leads me to what's going to happen next week, where there's actually now calls for total boycotts of matches until the FFA kind of think, well, there needs to be a more fair and equitable process for appeals, for banning people. Or appealing for banning.
And that's
appeals for banned people.
And that's basically your stance, where there should be...
Well, look,
What is your stance?
I'm a 30-something. And I've been a football fan through and through. And I remember growing up, when you played football, you definitely copped a bit of treatment where it's like, oh, I like playing football, and then some wag will pipe up and go, wog ball, why would you play that? or even better still, when you're playing the game, some wag or walk past going, "Oi, why don't you play a man's game?" So there was all that sort of stuff.
Please tell me what would define a man's game. Because it's definitely not cricket, because that's boring as shit.
Like, Australia is a sporting nation. Despite your apathy, champ, like, it is a sporting nation. So there's a lot of sports to choose from and to follow. Now, from that, there's a pecking order. And growing up, you kind of got the sense that there were a lot of sports, and then there was football down the bottom there. But I'd argue in the last 10 to 15 years, I think football's come a long way to being accepted in the mainstream. I think a lot of that's got to do with the Socceroos being able to come into the being the World Cup on a regular basis, and I think also with the rise of the Wanderers. I think those are the kinds of things that have really lifted the game's profile. But I think that sentiment of that wild ball sentiment, I think still remains. And I think it's still there with that report, that article that happened a couple of weeks ago, where it's almost like trying to put the sport back in its place, you know? So anyway, in a very long-winded way, I kind of get to where I think appeals are relevant here, where you compare it to other sports where, people will turn a blind eye a little bit more with the banned issue. Like, if someone gets... if you look at it comparatively, if someone gets kicked out for acting in drunken, disorderly behaviour, you might get slapped with a fine, you might be told not to come to a game or two, and that would be it, you know?
Yeah.
But in football, the way things are at the moment...
This sounds like, a couple of months to...
A life ban.
Yeah.
You're looking at a life ban. So there's a lot of pressure on football to kind of... and I think a lot of it's still about challenging stigma. Like, football's got to try a lot more harder than the other sports to stop unruly crowd behaviour. But I think to add it into the mix is that idea of appeals. Like, if you can establish a more transparent appeal system, I think that's also going to be challenging the anti-football sentiment, And I think that's the dilemma that the FFA faces. Not to be absolutely empathetic to the FFA, but I think that's where they're caught at the moment.
Yeah,